Welcome, everyone. This is our March Women IT Pros call. And today we have Jo Burkholder, who is going to be talking about creating allies in a leaky pipeline. So we are recording this. It'll be on our YouTube channel, which is just at bit.ly/witpros-YouTube. If you don't want to be recorded because your name and image may show up, then feel free to drop and catch the recording later. But we hope you'll stick around with us and say hi. Let's see. It's a little slow to render today. So in the chat window, if you have a minute, please do a brief intro there. Tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, and how we can connect with you. So Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, whatever you're doing there, what general area of the country that you're in, and then any events that you plan to go to in 2021. And I will paste mine, but I do want to specifically mention that on Wednesday, March 17th, Microsoft is hosting the Include conference. And maybe Julie also has the info on that one, but I'll paste a link there. I think it's just include2021.microsoft.com. So I really encourage you to check that out. It is free to everybody on March 17th. So this coming Wednesday, right? Yeah, this coming Wednesday. And then also another group I've been hanging out with every Wednesday in the morning, there is the Women in XR group here. And then there's also Women in XR, which is where I met Victoria, who was on the call. So hi, Victoria. There's a great thing in alt space for Women in XR. So some really good meetups that are happening in that. Plus, we'll also have our Women IT Pros meetup at the end of March in alt space. So we do encourage you to participate in this, be active in the chat window. There may be some times when we say, hey, just come off mute and follow up. And we also have a group on LinkedIn that you're welcome to join. So either find it at the bit.ly WitPros LinkedIn link, or you can ping me. I'll give my social out there so you can find me on LinkedIn. We'll get you invited. And feel free to start up some conversations there. What we have upcoming, our European group has switched to podcast form, so that's all on our YouTube site. And also our Asia Pacific just posted their meeting from February on the YouTube channel, so definitely check those out. The next APAC meeting would be March 25th, Thursday at noon, which for us in the US is Wednesday at 6 after we do our daylight savings time shift. So definitely check that out. I don't know what their topic's going to be, but they're always fun. And then US-wise, as I mentioned, our next VR meetup is going to be in alt space on March 26th, 9 a.m. Pacific time. And everybody is welcome to that. It's a public event. Then April 9th, our next call should be Heather Newman talking about Women in Power Platform. So that's our US second Friday call. And of course, you can go to any call, whatever works for you. We're always glad to have you. And I'll put this link in the chat window as well. We do have the Join Community Mentors link if you want to find a mentor, if you don't have a mentor, or if you're looking to create a tribe, a group of people that you can bounce things off of. Like Navrioska is one of my tribe people. And, some days it's just like, okay, tribe, I need to talk. We do have a survey, and I'll post the link for this in the chat window. We do encourage you to fill that out and let us know what's working for you or what's not. And then just finally, this is an open source grassroots initiative. This is not an official Microsoft initiative. So we invite our speakers here to come and share things from their experience, but we aren't speaking on behalf of Microsoft or any other organizations except, the speakers representing themselves. So Jo is the founder of Terra Firma Cultural. She is a former professor of women and gender studies, an award-winning researcher on several projects, which you can read more about in the bio on our event site here. And I love this. She consults and coaches women, nonprofits, and small to medium-sized businesses who want to show up better as anti-racist allies. And I love this, where they work, live, and play, because, we're all living at work here. So I'll post her connection information in the chat window. But with that, Jo, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you, and you can start sharing your stuff.
Okay. Let's see if I can find. There we go. We'll try that. There we go. Yay. All right. Does everybody see that?
Yes.
Okay. Because I lose track of you when I see what I'm doing.
It's a new view that's coming out. They just announced it, and it'll make it a little bit easier to see. But I will keep watch on the chat window and let you know if there's anything.
Awesome. Well, so this is really just a big charade, so that way you don't have to look at me. You can look at pretty pictures instead. Pictures are much more attractive than I am. All right. So welcome, wonderful people. Thank you for being here. And as I see this slide much larger than I normally do, I realize that I'm probably looking at all male hands. I love this picture because they were sort of people of different colored skin, and realize that I'm also looking at like sort of probably male arms, right? Which is probably interesting because we can't do this. If women want change, we can't do this without men, right? So we need allies of all types, but it seems now an irony to have picked a topic for women IT pros that was all men. So I want to talk about three things today. One, why diversity efforts have tended to fail rather than succeed, because we've been doing this for more than 20 years. And some of us are still working in industries that have appallingly low results for having more women, for having more people of color, for having more people who are identified as LGBTQ compared to the population. And we are spending, many of our companies are spending more money on trying to do this. So why aren't we making more progress? I want to talk a little bit about then what we can do instead, and how I think we can get started. So as of 2020, and the numbers have remained unchanged. I found an earlier study that was dated 2016. The numbers were basically unchanged. What we find is that most programs, if we are lucky enough to work someplace that has an explicit diversity program of any kind, most people say that the programs are under-resourced. That is, we're asking people to do them part-time as part of their job, in addition to their regular job. We're giving them 10% of their job description, 25% of their job description, and asking them to do a job that is 50 or 60 or 80% of the job that needs to be done. Many initiatives don't reach across functions. That is, we create little pockets where we've got one little silo where things are working really well, but we fail to figure out how to get that to transform and move across functions. Lots of us go with what I like to call that feel-good metric. Like, it feels good. I think we're doing good stuff. I don't think we need to measure anything. How many people do you actually have? I don't know. I belong to an organization. I asked them, I said, so if we're going to do this, we need to know, have we ever asked how many people of color, how many people who identify as this, that, or the other? Oh, no, we don't. But I think we're pretty good, is what they told me. I think we're doing pretty good. It's like, we can just tell by people's profile pictures. I said, well, one, that's asking a lot. And number two, I looked at the directory and said, about half the people on here don't have a picture. So how do you know? Like, oh, well, I guess we don't. Right? Not an untypical problem. Most of us are using or relying on incomplete and ineffective methods. That is, if you look at what most groups are doing in most places, we're still relying on best practices that were the best thing we had going for us back in the 1960s. We've updated it. We've made fancier slide presentations, right? We can do all sorts of great things with PowerPoint slides, but our methods are not terribly different, right? Many of us don't like to go because we're afraid of the blaming and the shaming. And I could ask for, I can't see you all, but I could ask for hands up if I could see you, right? How many of us have been in a meeting about diversity that has maybe used the term, a friend of mine used this recently, pale, male, and stale, right? Now, if you happen to be pale or male or, I don't know, maybe the stale does or does not apply to you, but you can't go then feel like you've been really welcomed and people are actively hoping that you're going to be part of that solution, right? Why would anybody want to show up for a meeting where they're going to be called out as being pale, male, and stale? Most of us are using taking methods that are things that are periodic. So we have that great all hands meeting, that great workshop that happens every once in a while. It is often not the priority. I've got one company I'm working with. I have been on their list to be brought in for more than 9 months. I said, did you find somebody else? They said, no, you're still top of our list. But, it's just not, we've got other things to do first. So it's not a priority, right? And if you come from places like some of the places I've worked, then it's often reactionary. We do something about diversity when something bad happens. We put a band, it's like falling down, busted up your knee, and mom or dad slaps a Band-Aid on it and says, look, you see, we took care of you. Look how well we take care of you. That does nothing about the bumpy sidewalk out in front of the house, which is why you fell in the first place, right? It's a little bit of care, but it's not really addressing the problem. And as a result, where diversity is working for us, we know that we have people who are doing it well, see great returns on diversity, but most of us aren't doing it all that well, or aren't in places that are doing it all that well. And so we don't really get the benefits of that diversity, which leads to this sort of unvirtuous cycle of then people say, well, I don't know if it's really worth the money because it doesn't really seem to work. So why should I put more money towards the program? Why should I try to spread it across functions? Why should I bother measuring my goals if I just feel good about it? Why can't I just leave it like that, right? Because we don't do it well, so we don't see the benefits. When I actually get down to brass tacks and ask somebody what's really going on, the top 3 things that people tell me have to do with scarcity. We don't have the resources. And that might be time, that might be money, that might be staff. I don't have the people on board I need to do this. Fear. I'm gonna mess it up. I don't want to say anything or do anything until I know I can do it right, because I don't want to make it worse. So I will wait until I have a perfect solution before I do anything. And anybody of you who work in areas where things are iterative know that waiting to have something perfect is not ever going to get it done, right? And confusion. I just don't know what to do. I see it. Sometimes I see things happen and I stand there with my mouth open, maybe not with my mouth actually open, and going, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to start. The problem is too big. It's too complex. And I can't start to figure out where one thing starts and where the other thing ends. And I'm afraid that if I start picking, again, fear, if I start picking at the problem, start pulling at the thread, that something is going to unravel. Just too complicated. So here's a little thought experiment for you. When was the last time you personally were performing at your best? At least the best that you remember. And what was that like? What were you doing? What kind of conditions were you operating? Right? This may have been a long time ago. This may have been a short while ago. This may have been yesterday. Maybe it was before we had a pandemic. I'll give you a second to think about that. Right. Last time, and some of it, the hindsight is great for this, because there were days I know in my own career where I felt there was that constant grind, and I was worried about this and worried about that, and I had lots of things going on, and I felt very busy. But I can still look back at points and go, oh yeah, there was that time. I was kicking it. I was crushing it. I might not have felt it at the time, right? But I can look back and go, oh yeah. That piece right there, that was really good. Now, I'm not actually a mind reader, but I've done enough research, I think. So let's see how much of this works for any of you. Kathy, let me know if somebody tells me I'm totally off base, totally wrong. Because I'd love to know I'm totally wrong. I'd love to know it. Not a mind reader, but here's my prediction. Number one, your needs were met. If you were kicking it, you were performing at your peak, you were not worried about paying your rent, insuring your car, you weren't worried about your personal safety, you weren't worried about whether your kids were getting enough education or the right kind of education in the right kinds of settings. Right? Your needs were met. You had the tools that you needed from work. You had the skills. I'm going to bet you were working in a condition of psychological safety. You could go in and you could do your job, and if there was a little bobble today or a little bobble tomorrow, it was going to be okay. If you were doing something risky, everybody knew the risk that you were taking, and you knew that people had your back. You were safe. And I'm going to guess that you felt that you knew what you were doing. All right, you had some autonomy, you had some control. Right? So in short, you were working at your best in a condition where there was no or very little scarcity. There was no fear. And there was not a lot of confusion. If there was confusion, there was like, what do I need? There were choices to be made. But there weren't wild, crazy, like, oh my gosh, I don't know what to do here. How do I even decide? You were not lost, right? You could make intentional connections and choices. Right? That's when you're at your best. And oddly, sometimes as people move into leadership, we forget how to recreate those conditions for other people. We know that that's when people work at their best. We know that that's when the people around us are going to be at their best, but we forget and we fail to create those conditions. Here's another little experiment. And this goes to my broader point about allyship. When was the last time you took a risk to stand up for something in which you believe deeply? What was the cause and what was the risk? Now I say, and try to think about a time when you know for sure that you actually did it. And I will say this with all due respect, because I have somebody who I knew who came to me and said, oh yes, we had this meeting, and this person in the meeting, they were doing wrong, and I was totally against it, and I made that perfectly clear, and I really stood up for justice, for this thing that I really believed in. And somebody else who was in the same meeting came to me later and said, what happened to person number one? They just sat there. They didn't say a word. I said, well, that's funny, because they told me they were this great defender of the innocent. Like, I think maybe they were just thinking it really loudly in their head. Right? And we get stymied sometimes, right? that something happens, and sometimes it is just so shocking. It's like we know in our heads that this is wrong, 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 and we might be saying, oh my gosh, somebody needs to say something. They need to tell this person to shut up or do this or do that, and we think it really loudly, but we don't actually do it. So think of the last time you actually did it. And here's the question. What was the cause and what was the risk? Was it something big or was it something small? And was the cause big or small? And was the risk big or small? Right. For many of us, depending on where you sit, for example, backing, say, Black Lives Matter. I live on the liberal left coast. Putting a Black Lives Matter sign in my window, in my yard, just makes me like half the other people in the neighborhood. I've lived places where putting a sign in your yard gets your house vandalized. Right? So the same thing that might be a small risk for me or no risk for me is not necessarily right. There's not a uniform measure of risk for a particular act. Did you do something publicly or privately? Did you stand up at a meeting and tell somebody, no, look, she was talking? Gosh, Bob, thank you so much for reiterating Joanne's point. Or did you pull somebody aside after a meeting and say, hey, you know, I noticed you were kind of like stepping all over Juliet's ideas. That's not cool, man. Was it something personal or was it something political? What were you able to do? Where are you? Where were you in all of that? And then the other half of this is to think about what made it easier or harder to take that action. Who was there in the room with you? Or, you know, maybe psychologically, who was, you know, there in your heart, right? Every once in a while, something comes up and I've got kind of a special kid, and whether my kid is in the room or not, something tweaks me. And I'm like, no, I'm doing this because this is for my kid, right? They were there with me. They weren't physically in the room. But it's a whole lot easier to stand up for things that I think involve or make a difference in the life of my kid than make a difference in the lives of like people in general, maybe. What was at stake? Was it something big or was it something small? Because some of us are willing to dive in. If the stakes are large enough, we're all in. Right? I'm not going to let this go down without a fight. Other things, it's like, no. That's too big. That's too risky. I can't do it. But like, if it's a question of like, I don't know, making a more conscious choice at the grocery store or pushing to go to that Black-owned coffee shop as opposed to the one that's closest to my house, well, that's a pretty small stake. And how long did you have or how long did you take to make that choice? Because some of us need time to think these things through. And if we've given a thought about, ooh, this is how I want to run my life, this is how I want to work to work out, it's a slow and it's a deliberate choice process. And some of us stand up and are better at doing things in the moment. Right? We miss some things in a moment we can see in hindsight and have to think about how to do them differently. So all of these have to do with how we show up potentially as allies. Right. And I think of allyship, there's lots of different definitions of allyship. People talk about differences between allies and accomplices, and my favorite term, co-conspirator, right? Because I kind of like to be a little bit subversive. But allyship, we can think of allyship as this broader category of working to create together to create new and innovative ways of being, new ways of doing other things, right? Of working together to do something. And I boil it down to 3 elements, 3 things that we need to do this effectively: awareness, abundance, and action. Awareness, abundance, and action. And I learned this. I had the privilege of living in Kentucky for a few years, and got to meet this fantastic civil rights activist, a woman named Braden. Little teeny tiny grandma of a lady when I met her. Not, maybe she was 100 pounds wet. She was teeny tiny, but she had a spirit that was fierce. And she would drive all the way from Louisville game since the 1950s. My husband Carl Braden had a house firebombed at the outskirts of Louisville in the 1950s, because they had sold it in an unrestricted neighborhood. And then they both and the family and the other family were, who's been tried for sedition twice in the state of Kentucky, and she's now in their Hall of Fame. And I had the opportunity to work with her and talk with her, ask her, like, how do you do this? How do you keep doing this? And over the course of the months that I worked with her, this is what this boiled down to. How do you be a lifelong ally? These 3 things. So awareness is really twofold. One, it's an awareness about what is out there in the world. So reading, watching, listening, exploring, right? A lot of which we can do on our own. We don't need to have others who are around, right? Books, movies, right? Conversations about differences and commonalities. So how often do we take an opportunity to sit down and have a conversation with somebody who is different than us? And I know it's been particularly hard in the last year, right? That we don't get the chance. I can't walk into the lunchroom or the cafeteria and pick somebody I haven't met before and say, you know what, there's somebody I don't know. Let me go sit with them and talk with them at lunch. Can't happen, right? But it's a challenge for a lot of us to sit down and have a deep or interesting conversation with anybody who is not like us. And we don't often have those opportunities to do so, and we often don't create them for ourselves. Awareness is often also can refer to not only what is out there in the world, I should also say what's inside of us. So are we aware of how we operate in the world, who we are? Do we know what scares us and what doesn't? Do we know where our biases and our prejudices lie? Because we all have prejudices, right? I'm afraid of dark alleys at night. Not because I've walked down the alley and I know something bad lurks down the alley. I got taught that, women shouldn't walk down dark alleys at night alone. So I'm prejudiced. Right? Awareness is also about our ability for empathy. Can I feel and hear and feel for other people? do I know enough about them to have a sense of what people are going through? And where we don't know about areas, people have suggested this is this Pareto principle kind of thing that people talk about in other kinds of contexts. At what point do I need to ask somebody, like, could you please tell me what it's like to be you? Like, well, no, I don't really have time to sit and educate, I don't know, every man on the planet about what it's like to be a woman. I'm not going to do it. Look, there's a whole bunch of books and movies and things. You can find this out on your own. So the idea is work to get yourself about 80% of the way there. And then ask for help for that other 20%. Right? Read the book, watch the film, listen to those podcasts, explore those internet places, and then maybe go to a friend or someone you know and say, hey, I was reading this book. What do you think about it? Does that reflect your experience? Without saying, tell me everything there is about I need to know about, I don't know. Tell me all there is to know about Black people. Like, I can't. No, I'm not going to do that. No one's going to do that for us. We got to figure it out. Do it on our own. Part of this is also an awareness of readiness for change and knowing where we feel, both in terms of, if we're talking about organizational change, where are organizations in terms of readiness for change? And this scale is based on, the scale on the left there is based on a guide to anti-racist organizational transformation from a group called Crossroads Ministry out of Chicago. They have whole detailed guides about what all of these things mean, but we can move from those organizations that I don't think there are very many that are outright exclusive these days, but there used to certainly be those. We don't have any of whatever people, we are only these people in our group, and we don't want anybody else. Thank you very much. Actually, I take that back. I think I saw something recently about a very exclusive country club somewhere recently on the internet that said, no. I know, like, yes, we know that you might be able to afford the membership, but we don't want you to afford the membership because we want us to be our exclusive little club. Too bad. You cannot join. We actively work to keep other people out. To groups that are, yeah, you can join us if you want, so long as you're willing to be just like us. Maybe folks that are, maybe organizations that are have a symbolic level of transformation. We put out lots of messages about how we welcome all people. We welcome all people. We don't discriminate. We don't do this. We don't do that. We embrace and we love everything. But it's all promotional. It's all lip service. Right? To organizations that start to work towards actually, on that second half of that chart, moving towards actually being truly kind of radically inclusive. Saying, yes, it's okay for you to be, not only is it affirming, okay for you to be here, we want you here with all of your differences, and your differences are okay with us, from starting to look at, how do I change my policies? How do I change the way my procedures, how I do things, the expectations I hold of people, in order to bring in and welcome and keep and hold in abundance and psychological safety all of those people that say I want. And once that takes root, there's that tendency, I think, to move towards inclusion, and where people become, I don't know, it's kind of like being a brand advocate. Right? where you're not just doing the work within your own organization, but you're starting to reach out to other organizations and saying, look, I want to do business. I only want to do business with other organizations that are moving in this direction with me. And gosh, if your organization is struggling, we'll lend you a hand to help bring you along with us. Right? But we're going to pay conscious attention to that. Should be inclusive evangelists. And the same thing can happen to us on a personal level. Right? How ready are we to being open to change? And bridging, and really bridging differences. So there's this thing called the Intercultural Development Continuum that is determined by this little test you can take, the Intercultural Development Inventory. And it's an individual test, assessment. I shouldn't call it a test. Test, it makes it sound like you can pass or fail. You can't pass or fail, right? You just fall somewhere on this continuum from the missing differences entirely. Nobody is different. Everybody's the same. Differences don't matter. Maybe we've heard there's only one race, the human race. Right. To being judgmental about differences, to de-emphasizing differences. Well, yes, there's differences, but we're really all the same, aren't we? Don't we really all just want the same things? To understanding that we really do have different experiences of the world, different views of the world in ways that significantly impact people's lives. And that willingness, taking that additional step to move towards willingness to want to take action. And what you find is that there's very, very seldomly do you find people at this end of this intercultural, what they're calling the intercultural mindset, who are members of exclusive groups. Groups that are exclusive tend to be very judgment down at the other end, right? So the more we move individuals towards being adaptive, the easier it is to move our organizations towards being inclusive. Right? They're independent, but they're not completely independent. So there's awareness, there's abundance. And this was new to me, right? And I've messed around with the terms for this, so I would love to hear whether this resonates as the right term. By abundance, I'm talking about the absence of that scarcity and fear mindset that says, if I screw up, something bad is going to happen and I'm not going to be able to make it. I don't have enough. Seeing the world as a zero sum, that if I give up some of my power, some of my privilege, if I give up some of what I got, if I give some to somebody else, it means I'm going to have less or I'm going to not have enough. And that often seems to come from a place of hurt, right? I know lots of people when I started out, I was originally trained as an archaeologist. And I had people that I turned to for help because I thought for sure they had gone through some pain, seen the problems in the system. And so I thought I could turn to them for help with my own struggles with the system as it existed. And what I found often, not always, but often, was somebody who said, yeah, I was hurt too, buck up. Get, toughen up, kid. I don't think they called me kid, but that felt like they did. Right. They had a lot of pain that they were still carrying around that said, the system hurt me, so it's okay if the system hurts other people. That's just the way the system is going to work. That's how we're going to decide who's worthy and who's not worthy. As opposed to saying, look, the system did me wrong and it was painful, and gosh, nobody else should have to go through this. I'm going to fix the system. They were still too hurt to do that. So figuring out what we need to do to heal ourselves, learning to abide discomfort. So thinking about what it takes to heal our pains, takes to heal the troubles that we've maybe had, is not a comfortable thing. Right? There's some pain to get through. And you look at writers who talk about healing interracial differences and interracial trauma, people like Resmaa Menakem, who talks about good pain and bad pain, good pain and dirty pain, actually, not bad pain, dirty pain. But good pain is that pain that heals, right? It's hard to get through. It's anguishing. But when we come out the other side, we actually have space to grow, right? And I think of it a little bit like when I've been doing a lot of hard workouts and I finally get to the massage therapist and they dig into those muscles and the knots in my muscles, and oh my gosh, does it hurt? But when it's done, oh, my arms and my legs move differently and more fluidly, and I've got space to grow and grow strong again. So it's that kind of work, often on an emotional basis. We can talk about mindfulness and humility, learning to pay attention to ourselves, to how we show up in the room. And I will just, because I'm running out of time, talk about learning to fail forward. Trying to remember who I learned that term from. But we're gonna screw up. If you're doing racial equity and gender equity work, you're gonna make a mistake. I make mistakes. I screw up. Things change. Things that I've used as terms for something used as, like, well, that's a perfectly good word for that. Someone says, no, I don't like that word anymore. Here's why I don't like that word. I go, oh, okay. All right. We live and grow. Right. But we can't do that if every time someone says, hey, I don't like that word, I would wish you'd use this other word. If I then retreat and go, oh my gosh, I screwed it up. I can't do this. I'm not meant to do this. Then I can't move forward. And the last bit is idea of accountable action. And this was the best thing that Anne Braden taught me, right? Is this question of who's going to ask you what you've done? Right? Because I can think all I want in my heart and my mind about how the world is unjust and how I think it ought to be. And I can write it all in my journal and I can maybe post it on my social media. But where am I actually going to be held accountable to what I've done? Have I looked at the numbers? Have I been explicit and transparent about how I made this decision, or how decisions were made? Have I reviewed policies and practices and procedures to think about how they impact people and the ways in which I want things to work? And who's going to ask me next week, next month, a year from now, what have you done? Right. I know people who've set up dashboards who've never then looked at the dashboards. Right? They don't get updated. So, well, it's nice you set it up, but what have you done? Right. we're going to measure the metrics, but we're not going to do anything. We're just going to see if they change miraculously over time. I have some things, if you're looking for new places to look, some of these are local, best local resource. You may not have much listings where you are. I know if we're here in Seattle, Intentionalist has great resources on folks who are women-owned, minority-owned, veteran-owned, LGBTQ-owned businesses, and they're building a directory of folks all across the country. If you haven't read Tali Laveri's Confessions from Your Token Black Colleague, I highly recommend that. And of course, if you belong to an organization that might be looking for help, please feel free to reach out to me at Terra Firma Cultural. And or I belong to the Pacific Northwest Organizational Development Network. There are similar networks probably wherever you are located, but they've got lots of skilled folks who are out there with the intention of some great heartfelt ways to help organizations move forward and transform. It's the reason for being. So thank you very much. And that should give us a few minutes.
That's great. Yes, we have 9 minutes.
Woo.
Thank you so much. Gosh, it's hard to get to the little clap icon, but let's see. There we go. There, we can do the the digital and the virtual applause. Well, we had some great conversation going on, and I don't think there were any questions there, but we'll start with, does anybody have any questions that they want to ask? And you can come off mute or you can type them in the chat.
I just wanted to make a quick comment, excuse me, Joe, and I really agree with you that it really does start with those small sort of actions, like you were saying, changing where you purchase your coffee, or I find out, luckily now, I work for a company that's female-founded, female-led, so it's wonderful to be in that environment, but that wasn't always true, and so what I've been trying to practice is that if I'm in a meeting that's, male-dominated or in something that way, to really try and amplify the voices of other women in the room, even just by saying, complimenting somebody's addition to the conversation or something like that. And I've been trying to just incorporate small things like that to really just help lift up just other voices, not even women, just people who are underrepresented. And I work in tech in that field. So thank you for making that point, really reinforcing that.
Yeah. Well, and I think we can think about what happened. When was the last time that somebody said, "Hey, Victoria, thank you. That was a great contribution." How did you feel when that happened? You felt great, right? Even if it was a small thing. Working with Pacific Northwest Organizational Development Network. We've got a board of directors who, it's not every time I touch something, but I do something and there's always somebody there going, "Wow, that was great. Thank you so much for doing that." Right? And it feels good. So it's going to feel good to somebody else.
Yeah. Pass it on.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
This was like, if I could stand and do a round of applause and a standing ovation, I'll be doing it right now. So just imagine that in your head. This was great. So we just started in my company a D&I council type to kind of trigger this whole action into like our thought from action, and it ignited the Microsoft Ignite where I met Kathy in person and a bunch of and I brought this to HR as a way we're not actually doing anything. We were on the face of just, yes, we're inclusive, but what we doing? How does like other people in the company feels about this? And there's always the question of, are we doing enough? Right? So we launched our first baby, which is a pronoun initiative of recognizing that not everybody goes with the same pronoun that you can associate it, but the way they look, right? And there was a whole thing behind it, a lot of research of me like asking people, and when we were about to launch, I wanted to launch a survey. So that question over, when was the last time that you went against to kind of empower other people. And I thought that it was really important to have that data before launching the initiative. Like, how do people feel about this now? Have they heard about this before? Do they go by non-traditional pronouns and all of that? And there was a blocker over, they just wanted to launch because they wanted to put it on the all hands. And I was like, no, we need to ask these questions first. It's gonna take like 2 days. Let me work on this. And we end up launching it, and it make all the difference because a year from now, we can ask these questions again and see the impact. And and I see people using their preferred pronouns on platforms on our company that was very rare after this. And I'm like, I'm like, wow, this actually it worked. Like, people are using it, people are asking. And I'm still working with the sense of asking people when I first met them how they prefer to be called, both pronouncing name, because it's so odd, because I'm not used to it, right? But I feel like it's so important. And the whole thing about abundance and accountable action is something that I've been working on a lot. Just because I never feel ready to do what I need to do. Never. And then I end up like researching for years and doing nothing. And now I'm trying to do more. And there's always a question of how do we prioritize over what's important? Not only for me as an individual, for my company, and for like, how can I help? And how do you you come up with a list, right? But one thing can be important to me and not important to some other people on my same company or on my same role or wherever else. With your experience, any tips that you can give over which initiative we could launch first, since this is our baby? And
it might depend on sort of who you are and where you are. If you've got the survey data, what's going to make the biggest impact to the most people?
Yeah.
Right. Or alternatively, I would think about, and HR is part of the equation, but HR should not be the only part of the equation, because diversity is about people, but and the people functions within your organization. But if the CFO and the COO and the CEO aren't also on board with this, right?
Yeah.
What the HR leaders want to do and what the grassroots want to do isn't going to go it's going to struggle. So if you can use this as an opportunity to talk with some of those other leaders about what would they envision, what do they think is possible, that might be part of it. The easy things that people start looking at are things like looking at HR and recruiting processes, because that starts to change the nature of your pipeline. And once you bring people in, how are you supporting and growing those people within your organization? Not just in the skills that they need. We do lots of companies do lots of great work to make sure that their employees stay skilled up, right? Learning the latest, you're all Microsoft folks, learning the latest stuff in Microsoft, learning to use all the tools. But do they also help people grow in terms of awareness about racial and equity and gender equity issues? Is there a program in place that you could put in place to help people grow in that way on a regular basis, not on the, okay, once a year, we're going to bring in a really cool speaker. Yay. And then a week later, we've all forgotten what they do or what they said. Or there's a handful of us who are like, oh yes, that thing from a week ago, from a month ago, let's keep doing that, and are struggling to do it in that context, right? How do you bring somebody in to get that work to continue longer term, because the more you build, the longer it will spread and start to sustain itself. So
Sandy has a question, so I think we can take just that one question and then we're going to have to wrap up. But Sandy, go for it.
Thank you. Actually, it was just a comment. I just wanted to share from a supplier diversity standpoint. I think that one thing that we can all do within our organizations, whether you're a business owner or not, is to be intentional. And I would say that's especially if you're a diverse organization, as mine is. So you need to look out for opportunities to support other minority-owned businesses. Don't just go out and just get whatever vendor you want for whatever service or product that you need. Go out and look for ways to do that. So I just kind of wanted to put that reminder out there, because it seems like everybody's always looking to see what they can get instead of just talking about what they can give. And so that's always been my perspective, that I always try to think, how can we connect and help each other and not just look to the large corporations for big contracts? How can we help each other and then just kind of sprinkle the love everywhere, right?
Right.
So.
Yeah, it's part of that sort of sense of a complete audit. Not only are your internal policies and procedures, but like, who are you interacting with, and who are you doing business with? And it's tough because we can't always find the suppliers we want, but it's eye-opening to find out that you don't have the suppliers that you wish you had, and have to go a little bit further, look a little bit harder to find those people. And it means the world to those businesses to be sought out too. So.
Yep.
Great point. Well, thank you. We've got to wrap up now, but Joe, thank you again. And thank you everyone for attending. I put some links in the window there. And remember, our next US event is going to be on March 26th. So if you want to join us in Alt Space, if you need any help, let me know. We can get you in there. And then April would be April 9th, second Friday in April. So look forward to having you join us, and watch for us on Eventbrite, on LinkedIn, on YouTube. And please do fill out the survey if you have a couple of minutes. So thanks.
Awesome.